don't believe that we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of government. All we can do is, by some sly roundabout way, introduce something they can't stop.
Hayek has basically been proven right, or at least that's what it looks like a lot. If you look at what he predicted, manipulating interest rates would do to the economy and what bailouts would have sort of a moral hazard effect. And if you sort of study what's been happening for the past, 30 years or so, then it really does seem like all of his predictions and warnings just came true. The problems that he described manifested, and that's what ultimately led to the great financial crisis of 2008, for example.
Today, Aaron Van Werdum delves into the ideological clash between Friedrich Hayek and John Maynard Keynes, which fundamentally shaped economic discourse in the 20th century. Keynes advocated for government intervention during economic crises, while Hayek staunchly championed a laissez-faire approach, believing in the self-correcting mechanisms of the free market. These debates, originating in 1931, persisted for decades, as policymakers grappled with the dilemma of interventionism versus market autonomy. Due to the popularity of Keynes's ideas, Hayek struggled to gain traction over policymakers and the public, considering he could not provide a solution to the problems in Keynes's model. That is, until the existence of a remarkable technology that presented itself to the world in a perfectly sly and roundabout way. Aaron Van Werdum is the esteemed author behind the Genesis book, a comprehensive exploration of the historical journey that paved the way for the creation of Bitcoin. We have a link in the description below where you can buy it. Let's hear Aaron tell us a bit about economic theory and the beginning of Bitcoin. But before we do that, I want to introduce our sponsors, Stampseed, the Orange Pill app, and Swan. Our partners are businesses and people that we respect, and our products that we at Bit Intelligence personally use. You're watching 21 Voices.
So the book really sort of explores, in a way, the history of economic science itself. It starts mostly with Austrian economics and the emergence of that in Austria, of course, but there's even a sort of flashbacks of what was before that, like how was it different than what existed at that time, which was the historical school of economics. Then it compares sort of Austrians to the Keynesians and later to the Monetarists. It tells the story from a Hayekian perspective, and then you see his critique. And I think the big juxtaposition that sort of emerges in the book and that emerged in the history of economic debate is the role of the state in the economy. So Keynesians really believe that the state had a big role in the economy. So Keynes believed that the government had to spend the economy out of a recession, for example, while Hayek had this very bottom-up idea about the economy. So you let individuals and you let the free market reign free, and that's how you get the best, most effective, efficient allocation of resources. So more government or less government. And I think Bitcoin sort of represents the latter. So fiat currency has over the centuries evolved to be sort of this top-down way of organizing money. And then Bitcoin represents a new alternative now that approaches it in a bottom-up way. So this better reflects the philosophy of Austrians and the emergent bottom-up nature of economies. So monetary nationalism is a term coined by Hayek, who at one point in his career explained why the national fiat currency system sort of distorted the flow of resources on an economic international scale. So there's been different ways that national currencies worked. Some of them were partly gold-based, and of course fiat currencies were just completely unbacked. But in any of these cases, Hayek said, by having it sort of tied to a national economy, the economy doesn't self-organize as well as it should, because you have to deal with like exchange rates, and if you want to buy something from another country, you first need to get the currency from that country. So if there's a discrepancy in demand for products and services from one country over another, then the entire economy of that country is sort of affected by that, even the companies or the businesses that don't have anything to do with that discrepancy in itself. So it distorts the spontaneous order, actually, that's the term he used, for economies. So the ways economies self-organized is disrupted, distorted by having this national fiat currency systems, or just national currencies in general. So that's why he argued for a form of money that was international and could be used across borders, regardless of, without exchange rates or anything like that. Let's say the car industry in Britain, for example, is doing very well, and there's a lot of demand for British cars in the United States. So in order to buy these cars, now Americans first need to get British pounds, which affects the exchange rate between the dollar and the pound. So now the pound is getting stronger and the dollar is getting weaker, respectively. Now, because the pound is getting stronger, that means that basically every other product that's produced in Britain now gets more expensive for Americans to buy as well, even though that's not where the demand changed. The demand changed in like a specific industry, but all other industries are now affected as well. So this is how this distortion sort of happens. Yeah, so if you have an international money standard that just can be used across borders, then the demand for British cars would be reflected in the price for British cars, but the other British products wouldn't be affected by that at all. If there's more demand for one product, then that would drive up prices usually, but it doesn't drive up every price, it just drives up the price for that product. Well, with these national currencies, it just indirectly drives up all prices, even though that shouldn't happen.
Please bear with us for a quick message from our sponsors. These videos take a lot of time to make, and we've partnered with brands we trust like Stampseed and the Orange Pill app in order to get the funding we need to bring you these videos every week. Don't store your Bitcoin in cold storage without stamping your seed phrase on an indestructible titanium plate. Stampseed is fireproof, rust-proof, impact-proof, and easy to hide. It has no loose parts and will give you ultimate peace of mind that your Bitcoin is safe and sound for the long term. Click the link in the description below for 15% off your stamping kit. When I finally got Bitcoin, it hit me like a lightning bolt. It was the currency of the future, the only money that truly mattered. But there was a problem. I didn't know anyone else that thought like me. That is until I discovered the Orange Pill app. Suddenly, I was connected with a network of like-minded Bitcoin enthusiasts, right in my own city. The Orange Pill app is more than just a social network. It's a community of passionate individuals determined to change the world, one Satoshi at a time. This series is brought to you by Swan and created by Bit Intelligence. Remember to like this video and subscribe to both our channels for more videos like this every week. Thanks for watching.
Hayek and Keynes had these big debates in the 30s, most notably about these issues, about the role of the government in the economy, counter-cyclical ideas that Keynes was proposing, and Hayek had the business cycle, which he said caused the Great Depression. So they had these big debates, both public and private. And Keynes, in a way, won that debate. But when I say won that debate, I really mean sort of he won the popular vote, so to say. So his message was more popular because he sort of offered a solution to a problem, while Hayek sort of described the cause of the problem, but people needed the solution, or people wanted the solution. And perhaps in particular, the people in power or governments, they needed a sort of short-term solution. Governments in democratic countries like to be re-elected, so they need to sort of offer solutions in the near term, and Keynes had these sort of near-term solutions. So I think that's why Keynes's ideas took hold, while Hayek's ideas were just, I think he got the right idea, but they were just too unpopular to catch on. And this was actually also Hayek's criticism of Keynesianism for a large part. He disagreed with Keynes's approach of how to, deal with depression, but his even bigger concern was actually that the incentives didn't align for policymakers to strictly adhere to Keynes's ideas. Even Keynes's theory was that if the economy is in a depression, the government needs to spend, and then if it's going better, then the government needs to cut spending. But what Hayek said is, no, the government will just always have this incentive to sort of spend and make people happy, and the popular sort of pressure of doing that will also always sort of overwhelm what Keynes even thought was maybe better. So Hayek both criticized Keynes's idea for its merits and for its practical realism. Hayek has basically been proven right, or at least that's what it looks like a lot. If you look at what he predicted, manipulating interest rates would do to the economy, and what bailouts would have sort of a moral hazard effect. And if you sort of study what's been happening for the past 30 years or so, then it really does seem like all of his predictions and warnings just came true. Like, if you study this work and then study the economy, it really does seem like the problems that he described manifested, and that's what ultimately led to the great financial crisis of 2008, for example. One of the themes throughout the book is spontaneous order. So this is a term popularized by Hayek, in which he described how economies can self-organize without government involvement. It has been argued, and I argue, that free and open source software projects are also operating a lot like a spontaneous order. Like, it's something that sort of emerged from a community of users where no one is particularly in charge, and still it sort of works. Rather than that it's top-down structure, it's this bottom-up phenomenon. So that's how Hayek described the economy itself. That's how you could see free and open source software projects. And ultimately, I think that's how you can see Bitcoin. That's sort of the context of Bitcoin as opposed to fiat currency, where fiat currency is this very top-down, centralized way of organizing money. Bitcoin represents this really bottom-up alternative, and therefore better reflects, a spontaneous, ordered economy.
While Keynesian interventionism dominated economic policy for decades, Hayek's perspective struggled to offer a solution until the advent of Bitcoin. This remarkable technology, born out of decentralized principles, presents a viable alternative to traditional economic models. By decentralizing control and empowering individuals, Bitcoin augments Hayek's vision of a free market economy, providing a mechanism for self-regulation and resilience against centralized manipulation. As we witness the rise of Bitcoin, we're witnessing a new chapter in economic theory develop, one that embraces decentralization, individual sovereignty, and the potential for true economic freedom for the entire world. Stay tuned and remember to subscribe for the latest recaps, insights, and films about all things Bitcoin. This is 21 Voices. If you want to watch another episode, try this one here.